This is Jason Heat, and you are listening, watching, and otherwise enjoying the 3 Count podcast with Red Dog. I hear he's a Sherpa.
Lil B, check it out. A lot of work. Yeah.
When the sun goes down and the guns
Well,
come out.
by now, if you've heard this intro, that means you know what it is. It is the boy himself, the Red Dog. That's right, the man that leads you up the mountain called wrestling. That's right, Clifford Miller himself. And this is now entering 201. And like every good Sherpa, which I like to think I am, it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring today? You can see this man at Fight Pro. He is the creative producer. He is also a man of many talents. You can catch him on his podcast, Collective Possibilities. You can also, with yours truly, especially, been on a couple of those episodes. And then you can also find him attached to so many other promotions, including working backstage and even pushing himself to put himself out there and do help with character development or just like whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for a new spin, you definitely hit him up. He is the man, the myth, the legend, and my mentor and good friend, Jason Heat.
Hello, that is quite the introduction. Red Dog, you have red on your lettering, but you're not wearing any red today, and I gotta tell you, that feels like maybe gimmick sacrilege. Where's the red on the Red Dog, buddy?
I mean, the word red is right here. Like red. I mean, it just says hood.
Come
But
on, let's put it this way. How many wrestlers do you see wearing a black t-shirt?
oh yeah.
You gotta stand out from the crowd, brother.
I have a podcast. That's enough standing out right now.
I assure you that having a wrestling podcast is not standing out from the crowd.
I'm going to tell you right now that having a wrestling podcast, being a worker, and then always pulling the curtain behind, like, sure, a lot of people are like out there like, oh, hey, brother, like there's some things you probably shouldn't be doing or saying out there. So
I
whatever.
don't. I think this is in the best way possible. I think when this is working well, this is a opportunity for sort of group professional development, right? Like the whole purpose of this podcast is to provide skull session, brain space between you and a lot of people from all different parts of the wrestling business. And so it's a learning opportunity. It's not meant to be, an expose. It's meant to be skills building.
Yeah, and so the way I look at it too is that and the show is called Now Entering 201, right? But like it's getting more in depth, right? Like and picking the minds of like some of the guests that we've had, like some of my favorite guests, like bring them back on, talk to them about like how to get better in this business, right? And it's funny because like
some of your favorite guests and me, you just
but it's an opportunity to sit back and learn and even like Now Entering the Ring, right, itself, right? It's just a cool way of like getting to like learn and understand like people's development and how they've grown in the business, and then you bring them back and then you have a full conversation with them again about like, hey, like here's some things I'm thinking about or things that I want to develop, or what are your expectations, right? Like even we've had other workers on. I asked them the question like, what is your expectation when you see someone who's been working in a business like 3 or 4 years? What is the mindset for someone who's been in a business for 10 to 15 years or 15 to 20 years, or even for like 5 to 10 years? Like, what are your expectations for that person in particular? And I love hearing different answers and understanding and getting a grasp on like where they think. And so I could set my own expectations of like, all right, not only do I want to hit here, but now I want to get above that. And so I think it's a cool way for other people to sit back and listen and take notes and be like, oh, I never even thought about doing that before. So this is where like this whole show came and spun off of.
Absolutely.
But there is somebody that does want to make an appearance. He's been on every single episode, and so we cannot not have him on. Jason is all familiar with my man, the myth, the legend, Marvel's own. Got to make sure to put out their licensing, right? Deadpool is here. He's actually in every single, ever since we did Collective Possibilities, he's been on every single episode since then.
That's awesome. I will say, if you get big enough that Disney is coming after you for not mentioning that they are the licensed owner of Deadpool, you have succeeded wildly. You know what I mean? Like, not that that's a good problem to have, but in some ways that would be a good problem to have.
I'm sure Bob Iger is probably looking for a way to get some more money from from people because they have a writer strike going on right now. It's not like they can make any money or like just create new content. So he's probably about there like, I'm gonna look through some of these podcasts and see what's going. Is that Deadpool? Get him off of there.
Disney is notoriously litigious. They will find you. So
they will find.
Don't put him in the flavor text of the episode, and you should be fine.
Yeah, I should be okay. He's just hanging out in the back, be like, listen, I'm promoting your brand. Like, just don't worry about it, okay? But no, I'm definitely glad that we're here and we get to catch up and talk, right? Because the last time we were on the show, I think we did my podcast, and then we turned around, we did Collective Possibilities, which I definitely loved, and we went to Main Event in Columbia, and then we recorded the rest of episode 2. And
your episode is one of the most downloaded back episodes, actually. So the usually, in podcasts, you'll have your first week and then your first month. And after that, unless there's sort of a reason for stuff to lift up, it tends to then level off, and maybe occasionally someone will download an episode after it's happened. But your episode in particular of Collective Possibilities, which is still available on the Collective Possibilities app, or not app feed, even though I'm taking a bit of a break from the show right now. If you want to listen to Cliff's, it has been one of the most downloaded from the back catalog.
And I always feel like I grab it every once in a while. I see like you put it up there, and I grab it every so often, and I'll repost it. It was one of those fun episodes where we got to really just kind of sit back and talk about stuff that was really like important, right? Because like the one thing about the one thing, and I shared the story on the podcast, right, was like I had a good friend named Joseph, right, Padilla, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. But before I got to break into the wrestling industry, him and I were like best friends, and we'd always talk about like the paths that we wanted to take and the things that we wanted to do. And I kind of feel like now, because he wanted to be in the military, he did not. I went into the military. He wanted to wrestle professionally. He did not, obviously. Here I am, like make my way through the business, right? And it's been so much fun to like look back and learn and develop myself. But then like, Joseph was kind of like a big part of that. So to like be able to kind of like honor him a little bit in my own way of just like going through this thing that he always wanted to do and just like have fun with it, it's been a lot of fun. And I know he's looking down like, I'm very proud of you. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine actually a couple days ago. Realistically, a couple days ago we were talking about this because I was like, it's people ask me like, what got you into the business and what keeps you in it? And I was like, this. And then like talk about the times with Joseph when we were in the backyard back in 2003 wrestling, and then fast forward, to 2020. Here I am, like walking in and now developing this whole crazy character that just randomly appears wherever he wants.
There you go.
But I guess for me and like having you on, right? Because you have had Collective Possibilities and you've been able to do a lot of cool stuff with it and like grow the podcast the way you've been able to grow it. But then more importantly, you yourself have been through like a huge growth in like the past year, right? One, if you go check out his last episode on, you'll see his hair's different.
Yes, well, that is literally as of today. So that is, I sorry. Let me let you finish. Where do you want to jump to?
Yeah, no. So I guess it's for me to talk with you about it. Is like what's inspired you to keep growing in the business? I know like you've kind of had some like ups and downs like over the past year, but like what keeps you like in and keeps you growing, keeps you pushing to like reach those next levels in the business?
I think that one of the things that keeps me, it's interesting that you frame it that way. I never think about not continuing to go right now, in part because nothing comes from nothing. It's something that I keep telling myself that. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of wrestling. It's an important part of my life. I think one of the things that I've kind of learned over the last year is that maybe I was hoping it could be even like maybe everything that sort of fulfilled me creatively, and it doesn't quite work that way, or at least it doesn't right now, but it is a huge part of that diet and a huge important part of my ability to be creative right now, which is what's really important. And I want to be the best at what I do that I can possibly be. For me, it's constantly about growing and learning and getting the opportunity to try and master the craft when it comes to commentary. And then when it comes to being a creative producer, it really is about building the opportunities to be able to see stories to completion and tell stories in this very distinct medium and play with where I think wrestling can, particularly indie wrestling, can get more in depth on character development and story progression and earned moments, instead of sort of, not a knock necessarily, but a lot of the business mechanics of independent wrestling is sort of separated shows, big matches, maybe even dream matches. And sometimes that's really exciting. The idea that a match's story can be, this is a dream match. Not every match needs to have a 2-year build and stuff like that. Each match has its own story, and sometimes the match itself is the story. But I'm super interested in long form episodic storytelling. I'm super interested in watching characters grow and change and face adversity. And a teacher of mine in college said there is nothing more interesting than objectives that you fail at, and watching that in a wrestling space and how that builds tension and that the sort of dynamism of those obstacles. And that is what really motivates me to keep going, is like, I want to more and more have the platform to be able to tell more interesting and diverse stories. And that only comes from building trust and earning more ability to have that canvas. And then also wanting to spotlight and feature talent and friends that I really believe in. I feel like the whole idea of this entire business, industry, art form, however you want to phrase it, is, we all lift each other up when it's done right. You know what I mean? A great match gets both people over, even in someone's loss. When it does its job, everyone is coming out a little bit better to a lot better than when they came in, regardless of who is up and who is down. And I feel that way in terms of wanting to help with character coaching, or just even with booking or in commentary. It's all about, how do I help elevate the talent that's in the ring? How do I help provide a spotlight or a perspective on the company or the individual wrestlers? And on a very sort of selfish and pragmatic level, I also really, at this point, I'm saying, like, I don't know that it'll ever happen, but I'd love to work for a TV company. You know what I mean? Like, I want to get to a place where I am with AEW or WWE or Impact or MLW, like, that's become a real goal of mine. Now, whether that is as a commentator, whether that's in the creative department, whether that's just backstage with production, I do all of that in different areas. And I feel like everything that I do now is, how do I improve myself and my chances to if I ever get that opportunity, knock it out of the park. So you made reference, I do look very different today. I've spent a lot of time in the last year. It's been like 4 years since I had a haircut. You're literally seeing me the day that I got it. And yeah, I probably should have anyways. I liked growing it out, but part of the reason I did it is because I was taking my own advice that I give to others, where I talk about how important presentation is. And I'm, if I want to be on TV, I should look like me. I should be unique. I should find what that is. But I also need to be honest about what that look is. Like, what makes someone more compelling in terms of their presentation. And long-haired, scraggly, Mick Foley looking guy can work as a wrestler, maybe even as a manager. As an announcer, it's probably not what people were looking for. And if I'm telling other people how important their gear is, and I'm telling other people how important that presentation style, I needed to take that step. And it really started with me just on a very practical level. My beard had a lot of gray in it, and I don't think that's inherently a problem. But the way that it came in, it was outlining the bottom of my face. And I realized that on camera, it was basically like, it kind of like was cutting my face off. It didn't have a line. It didn't have a silhouette. And so I had never dyed my hair or my beard. Some of it just had to do with financially. And took until I was like ready to jump. And then I'm in there. I'm like, okay, well, let's do it all. So I've cut my hair, restyled it, shaped the beard, dyed my hair, dyed my beard, all for the very first time. Not just because I'm like, oh, I have to look younger and slimmer, though no one's ever said, unfortunately, that looking younger and slimmer hurt them from getting on television. But the idea of just like being more intentional and recognizing that whether it's fair or not, this presentation is probably going to make me more credible with a lot of people who are potential decision makers, and then I can add my style to it. Maybe it won't get me there, but not doing it might hurt me.
You know, it's interesting because you talk about like building a character or building through episodic television, right? Just developing characters and stuff like that. And it's funny because like being at the Wrestling Open, which is attached to Beyond Wrestling,
Sure.
it's been so eye-opening to sit on the outside and just watch, right? So like when I was at Voltage, like obviously you're always planning your matches and stuff like that, and you're there monthly, right? And you're just think about things, and you're always looking around, and you're trying to develop and understand and learn and keep working with like within the storylines that are happening. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that when I got to the Open, I got to work a match and stuff like that, and it was cool. But I was sitting behind the scenes, just kind of learning and trying to understand. But there's a guy, his name's Paul Crockett, and he's the creative mind behind.
Sure.
And I know he's probably not gonna like me putting it out there, but it is what it is at this point. Anyway, but he's the guy. So you sit back and you listen, and it reminds me so much of you, because I remember sitting in meetings and stuff like that and just chatting with you, and then you were like, hey, this is the story that I'm going for. I want you and you to work with each other, and this is the direction that we're heading in, and this is what I want you guys to do. This is how the finish is. And he's the same exact way. So like I'm just so accustomed to like hearing because I've been around you for so long. I'm so accustomed to listening to people tell me like, hey, this is what we're thinking about, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna move. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can definitely work with this. So listening to other people give their advice and stuff, and then like listening and just being an ear and a fly on the wall. I've been jotting down notes, and I filled up my previous notebook got filled up, so now it just sits in the car, and I just drive, and I'll go back in when I stop at a spot. I'll go back and read some of the notes that I took, and then I'll go to my new notebook and I'll start rewriting some of the notes that I took from previous lessons, so that way
Sure.
I know that, hey, this was something that was super important. You should probably rewrite this again, just so that you keep it in your memory bank and you keep working on it. But it's so cool to be able to sit back and listen to people talk about like, oh yeah, remember we did this last week, so we're gonna do this week, and we're gonna showcase this. Or remember we worked 8 months ago in this match, and you guys beat me with set finish. We're gonna tease that finish again, only I'm gonna catch it, and then we're gonna change it. And I'm like, bro, this is just. I was like, this is where I wanted to be. This is what I wanted to do. So like to sit on the sidelines and just kind of take notes and observe and watch the crowd has been super rewarding, because I've been there for like 8 weeks now, just like understanding and listening and interpreting, and then picking at people's brains and just like, checking it out and developing something that I can get into, and then just kind of waiting to hear my call. And then, once I hear it, then I know I'm going to take off running. I'm just waiting for that moment though.
Well, I would say first, that's very cool to hear about Paul. I don't know him well personally. I think we've been in the same room once, but I enjoy his work as an announcer quite a bit, and I'm happy to hear that that's kind of the direction that he's bringing. I think that a lot of talent, and no one is the same, and some people will chafe at it. So it all depends on where you've come from and what you're used to and the systems that you've built in. But I have discovered that I think a lot of talent would prefer to receive more direction than they do from bookers or promoters at a lot of shows. That is not to say that they want to be micromanaged, and nor do I think that it is at all useful to micromanage talent, especially if you're bringing in talent that you believe in and trust in, because that can really interfere in the process. But finding that medium and that collaboration, I do feel oftentimes a lot of wrestlers show up at a show and they just kind of get told something that might feel thrown together. They don't have a lot of information, and it doesn't instill a lot of confidence in the product. It doesn't necessarily instill a lot of confidence in the vision. And those are things that people can really buy into and also really help. I've described and if I've done this on this show before, I apologize, but in my brain, generally, I think booking a wrestling show is equivalent to hiring a group of musicians to play a mixtape live that you've heard in your head. It's not a band because all of the different songs are going to be played by different musicians, but just like a great mixtape may not be one artist, but when it's put together, there's a flow. It's not necessarily a narrative order, but it's an emotional arc or it's a thematic arc. It has highs, it has lows, it has different tempos. If you're starting with a 2-minute blast beat, you might want to end with Only in Dreams, Weezer long form style, dreamy kind of main event. You have these different ideas. You bring in your talent, and then you go, hey, I need you to play me a blues song. I need it to be on third. It's functioning in this way. Maybe it has to teach the audience this. Maybe we need to make sure that they feel this way because we're going to pull the rug out from under them later and we have to bring them up in order to bring them down. And it's got to be 6 minutes. It's got to have this element. And here's the goal for you. Or even sometimes I think here's a creative challenge, right? Like, hey, I really want you guys to do this match. And if you could play with it, I'd love to see what happens if this one doesn't have any strikes. You know what I mean? We're going to have a lot of these later. You guys are really technical. What if this is a complete hold for hold style match? Now there's something for you to play with as well that's a creative challenge. And then you hope that the musicians that you've hired go out and play those songs even better than you heard it in your head, and that the mix is an even better concert than it was when it was just a dream in your mind. A question that I have for you, so you've been on the sidelines. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure everyone does, but just a good recap. You have recently moved from the DMV area up to Boston. It's a big shift for you in terms of your career. You've been sort of sitting, learning, watching. What is one thing you feel like you've learned in those last 8 weeks watching this week-to-week episodic style that you are now going to try and take and put into the Red Dog character persona or wrestling style?
So there's been a couple things that have kind of stuck out, right? The first one is everything in the ring has to be big, and that just not goes for like the character, right? The character has to be big, has to be larger than life, right? But your movements have to be big. When you go to throw a punch, like you can't, it's not from this part. It's from way downtown, right? It's like you're throwing like a massive haymaker, right? Your sound has to be loud. You can't be like, right? Like it's got to project. Like there's a lot of things that are like, I've been taken away. Cause I know like, not that I wouldn't say there's certain people that don't, right? There's just some certain people who get it and certain people that don't. And I'll use an example of someone who I feel gets it, right? Killian McMurphy is a perfect example of someone who just understands. And like Chaz is the same way, but I'm using Killian for this purpose because Killian I will be in another room on the other side of the building and I will hear shooter. And I'm like, yeah, Killian just got in a ring. I know where the match is at if I hear Killian out loud.
I think that if this just ends up being a whole time of us putting different people that we think deserve it over, I'll be certainly like thrilled with that too. I think Killian McMurphy is, for as heralded as he is in certain circles, is still an unheralded creative talent. I don't just mean that in terms of in the ring, though I do mean that. I've had the fortune to know him since 2017 and sort of really get to follow his career and be part of it at certain times as a promoter or as a booker and as an announcer a lot. But I just think that he has a significant, that was my diabetes going straight to the top. Holy shoot.
They get too excited here. You got to calm down.
Seriously. So let's take that back. I think that Killian has an incredible creative mind that is probably underutilized as an agent or as a producer or just as an artist. I think that he is really interested in a lot of formal innovation. I think that he takes influences and inspiration from outside of wrestling. I mean, one of my favorite things that Fight Pro did, so super quick, Fight Pro is a promotion that is run by Ernie Osiris, who's a good friend of mine. He's got a team surrounding him, including myself and Rhett Titus and Mitch Franklin, the former Grizzly Redwood, and Prince Nana and others. And it's an interesting concept of what if indie wrestling was sort of really sports based and almost looked like it lived on ESPN2 with separate divisions and a rule set that includes violations and a season model where, depending on how you win, you get a different number of points, like 3 points for a submission, 4 points for a knockout. You work towards earning ways into the playoffs, just like you would in a more traditional sporting environment, but then also mixing that with episodic, long-form storytelling, character development, trying to get, I don't know that we've succeeded, but trying to bring elements of like prestige television in terms of those long-term character dynamics and production value and mesh those things together on an indie wrestling level. And so we did a first season that aired on IWTV. You can check that out. All of the episodes are up. And one of the matches was Miles Millennium and Killian McMurphy with Big Dust, or the Goons, against the Busky Brawlers, Joe Keys and Eric Martin. And I believe, I wish I had the exact words. I'm not going to waste time to find them. But when I sent them the match description, it was, we were setting up the Busky Brawlers to be the real big bads on the way to the finals of the playoffs. Their bigger bads were waiting in the wing, and we had this team called the Tonys that we had been following and seeing how they came together as an odd couple tag team, and we wanted them really clearly to be the good guys in this coming match. So we needed to make the Busky Brawlers the baddest, most dislikable people as possible. The Goons, however, were also heels, so you had a heel versus heel match. And so what I sent them is basically, this is heel versus heel, but the Goons are the heels we love to hate, and the Buskies are the ones that we just hate. This should feel like Looney Tunes versus Monstars. When the Goons are in control, they are clever, and they're kind of playing around with the Busky Brawlers. When the Buskies finally get them, they have no time for that nonsense, and they just beat the ever-loving shit out of them. And that's going to be the overarching story. Do with that what you will. We have 6 to 7 minutes. And they took that Looney Tunes versus Bullies idea and went the extra mile with it. There was a whole section with party poppers that had come from a backstage segment, and Killian and Miles are throwing these poppers in their faces, and it's just annoying them, and the big bullies are then getting confused, and they're trying to pull the poppers themselves, and it shoots them, and it's goofy and it's shticky, but it's full of psychology. And then the Buskies got their hands on them, and it was a massacre. And there's this last little standoff moment of Killian in the ring, and it's like Joe Keys is like, I'm going to kill you. Do you have anything left to say? Not literally, but that's sort of the moment thematically. And Killian pulls out one sad little party popper and shoots it into Joe's chest haplessly, and then gets his head knocked off. And then at the end, they give Big Dust, the manager, a pile driver, which he sells like death. And this jokey, fun, ha-ha moment becomes deadly serious. The Goons sell it as very serious in that moment. They've broken this shtick character that they've been doing, so we see how important it is because they've built it up. And we go from funny to feeling sad to then it's uncomfortable. And we leave setting both teams off into very different directions that we can play off in the long run. Even further down the line, depending on where things go next season, the fact that we referenced that Eric Martin's character was friends with the Goons before, and Joe says, kill your friends for me. Depending on where we want to go, there's a lot of room to pick up on tensions between the two of them, or what does Eric feel about that? Will the Goons come back for revenge? Did it change them and make them more serious? All of that through party poppers. And that was 5 men. You know what I mean? That was not one person, but I know Killian was a big part of the quarterbacking of that. That is something that is unique to his skill set and the people that he puts around him. And then also obviously Joe and Eric playing such great antagonists. That was one of those moments where you go, here's direction. This helped you. You didn't have nothing to go on, but they took that direction. I would never have written down on a sheet, and then you pull out the party poppers and
Yeah.
you do that. Like, couldn't have dreamt of it. It was one of my favorite pieces of overall business we did the whole season.
Yeah, and the one thing I loved about like working with the goons, right, and Killian, um, so there was a match at Voltage, right, the tag tournament that was happening with Dog Nation, and we're gonna peel the curtain back a lot for this one. So obviously, first match is happening, and it was with Grim and Vam, right, and they won their first match, and Tom Mitchell, and myself, right, were the next team out, and then you saw Grim jump over the top rope, lands on us, and then proceeds. We have another match, right? The initial plan for that, right, was there were supposed to be like 6 tag matches in this gauntlet tag team match. And thank goodness that there's someone like Killian backstage working, because he's like, you guys are going to be. So Tom and I ran the gauntlet and we went to the finals and we got beat by Dog Nation. So Killian looks at us and he goes, all right, here's how we're going to do this, right? You guys are going to, this is your shine spot you're going to have with Vam and Grim. And then we're going to run the heat, and then you're going to go to finish with Dog Nation. So you don't even have to worry about doing anything with us. This is what we're doing. And like we broke down a gauntlet match, like
Into the 3-match structure.
match. Yeah, 3 parts of a match, and like it just went over so smoothly. And I was like, I was so grateful to have some like a mind like that, because I was like, I'm going to plan a lot of gauntlet matches this way because it just makes sense. Like, you know, and I was like, I appreciated that this was what was going to happen, because I was like, for Tom and I, we were like, bro, we have to like learn like 4 matches. I was
Yeah.
like, there's a lot to learn, especially for, and you know, Tom and myself, like, sure, we are working a lot around, especially in the DMV, but it's like you're still playing 4 matches in less than, you know, 80 minutes, right? And that's not a lot of time. So it was grateful to have something like that happen. And then they're like, you just gotta remember your spots, and that's it. And we're like, all right, cool. And then that's what happened. Like, we just got there, we worked all of our matches and stuff, and you would have never guessed that that's what happened behind the scenes. But to get to like the back on track to what we were talking, right? Bigger movements and stuff like that, understanding. And then actually about Killian, going back into this, right? Getting lost in the moment is something that just needs to happen naturally. I've been reading this book, Be Water, My Friend. It's the Bruce Lee writings read by Shannon Lee. And it's been so cool to just.
And is that his daughter, Shannon?
Yeah. And so it's been so cool to listen to her interpretations of Bruce Lee's writing and like talk about it. And he was talking about the sequence. I made reference to it on another episode, right? But there was a scene in Enter the Dragon where he's working with his pupil, and they're talking about, he says, throw a roundhouse kick at me. And so his student throws like this beautiful roundhouse kick. And he's like, what are we, in an exhibition? It's like, no, throw some emotion behind it, right? So he throws it out of anger, and then Bruce blocks it. He's like, no, be with me in a moment and just get lost. And so they start throwing kicks and stuff, right? And it starts moving really slowly, but it's moving back and forth, and they're just in the moment. And then Bruce is like, how did that feel? And so his student went to go like to think about it, and Bruce smacks him. It's like, no, don't think about it. Just how did it feel? And then that's where it hit me, right? Really, it hit me a lot. It hit me really heavily. I stopped listening to this. I was listening to the audiobook. I stopped listening to it. I called Chaz right off the rip. And for those who know, yes, Chaz is my best friend. And I legit stopped, picked up the phone, called him. I was like, bruh, let me tell you this story. And it was telling him about it. And a couple weeks later, I was working a practice match at the Wrestling Open. And I worked this match, and I didn't even think about like the spots. And I feel like that was something that like even when I was down in the DMV, right, I was like always was thinking about, I got to be A, B, C, D. Mm-hmm. I got to figure out this. I got to think about that. Facials, right? Be big. Say something stupid here, right? Because that's Red Dog. He does whatever. And I would just like there would be times where I would get lost in the moment, and there'd be times where I would just like you could literally see on my face that I'm thinking about the next spot.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and this time I got to work a whole match with this dude named Osiris, and I just got lost in the sauce. And it was such an it was a 6 minute match, 5 minute match, and I just got lost in the sauce and had so much fun with the moment. And I was like, yeah, this is where we're at. This is how it's supposed to feel.
It's
And
finding the flow. It's also it's something that in acting, that's something that people learn. You know, when you're really adept at acting, what it is it's you of course you know what's going to happen next, but in the moment you have to not. You have to forget. You have to be able to fully exist in the moment that you're in, as though you don't know what's going to happen beforehand. Now, obviously, a little bit. There's a part of you that can't fully ever let that go because there is a prescribed path. But in the moment, you find a way to lose all that and just be fully present and there. And that's when the natural reactions will come out. And then as a director, what I always thought, you know, was real success was creating a circumstance, an environment, blocking, all of the other things where if you weren't going to prescribe for yourself, I have to deliver this line this way, but we know that for the sake of the show, there is probably a best intention, what have you. All of the environments, all of the prompts, everything that led you to that moment would cause you to naturally make the choice that we had decided on being the most productive for the show without you having to consciously decide it. That the world was built in such a way that when you entered into it, it would funnel you in each moment. That would be the natural choice because everything was layered in that way. Now, wrestling is obviously different. There's a lot more improvisation in it, but that idea of, okay, we've got our direction, we have where we need to go, we know the things we need to hit, but then I can lose all of that to be fully conscious and present in this moment with you. That's flow, right? Like that's when you get in that creative flow.
yeah, it was definitely, and that's what like once I felt it, like I was like, oh, this is what everybody's been telling me to kind of like do. Like Chaz naturally can get into that mindset, and that's just because
He also
Chaz,
has theater training.
yeah, he's a trained theater.
He's a professionally trained actor, and I think that there's a lot of different elements depending on where you come from. I mean, not to overtly psychoanalyze, but your background is in the military. That is not the same training mindset. You know what I mean? Like you, I doubt, are ever supposed to be fully in the flow. If you were to lose your regimented mindset, not know where you are, you could be at risk. Your friends, your colleagues, compatriots, however you want to phrase it, could be at risk. Now, I haven't ever been in the military, but I have beaten you at laser tag. So you tell me if I'm wrong.
I was more accurate.
Yeah, fine. Fine. Yeah, you were. Yeah. Listen, I'm not an accurate shooter, but I was effective.
Spray and pray for the win.
It's true. It's just button mashing and a lot of dodging and weaving. We have lost the thread. The point being is, I imagine that's a different mindset for you, right? And
Right.
an athlete's mindset's going to be different. People come into this from all these different places, and certain elements are going to be easier depending on your personality, but also the way that your brain has literally been trained. There's going to be things that you're able to do because of your dedication and your regiment that maybe, I don't want to pick on Chaz, but like someone else may have more difficulty. But that character, that innate charisma, that sort of finding the flow, playing to the audience, building a rapport with them, that's a part of theatrical training. You're not trying to build a rapport with anyone when you're in the Air Force.
Right.
So I think that's a big part of it, is that we've all been built in different ways through the different kinds of training that we've received throughout our lives.
And that's what I love about like pro wrestling is that you have like all these different elements that kind of blend together and kind of like put on for the bigger show, right? So whether there's like a lot of structure to it or a lot of improvisation, right? You're always doing something kind of different, and it's always a lot of fun. And so even for me, like I sometimes like I know I'll forget a spot or two, and I'm just like, whatever, we're gonna throw caution to the wind. I'm just gonna blast you in the face with a forearm because I have no idea what to do at this moment, and I kind of don't remember where we're at. So That's what happens. Just inform or
Well, you take a moment to reset.
yeah,
Noise is one of the great reset buttons, because if you've lost a crowd, if you've lost a moment, if you don't know where you are, and obviously there's different moments where this won't make sense, but in general, that I can't do it, but that sound, that big smack, that will draw everyone's attention. And suddenly now you've got everybody there, you've got everybody focused, and now you get to build off of that. And I think that that's really important for people to know, is that like if you could create a big sound, then you can get people's attention. And then you can use that moment to reset, get yourself in order, to take that time to think instead of having to rush, and instead of having to do the moment where you should be going smoothly and we can see it written on your face. It's one of those things where the moments where you as a performer and you as a character have the same objective, the moments where you have to be strategizing and the character has to be strategizing at the same time, those are the best moments, because everything's in alignment and there's no worry about that. So if you can create a moment where you actually have to be thinking and reacting to something, and the character is also thinking and reacting to something, then you've earned that moment of hesitation. You reminded me of this, and I just sort of wanted to like maybe shift the gear a moment of like the other thing that I do love about wrestling in terms of talking about different people's backgrounds. And I do think this is a community, a sport, however you want to frame it, a world that some of the most diverse people converge on. And I don't just mean that, though I do, in terms of race and ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation and size and all of these demographics, but also particularly as it relates to personal journeys. You get people who come in from the performing arts side. You get people that come in from the hyper athletic side. You get people who grew up under incredibly adverse conditions who will say, I would have maybe been in the streets if not for this. You get people who are literal bank robbers or this or that, with people who went to Ivy League schools doing dissertations about this as a commedia dell'arte variant. And then all of these people are in the back room of a VFW hall in West Virginia, and it's just such a strange moment where you meet so many people, or at least I did. I would have never had the opportunity to do so, right? I went to a Jewish private high school. It's a very limited survey. Even being a theater major at the University of Maryland, there was a lot of striation. There's a lot of unconscious barriers that prevent certain people from deciding they're going to go to college or they're going to major in theater and then they're going to do that. There's a lot of sameness, even when it expands out well beyond, okay, it's just a bunch of middle-class Jews in Montgomery County. And pro wrestling I have found to be incredibly different in terms of just truly being a space for so many different backgrounds.
That's what I love about pro wrestling. That's the best way to describe it. Like the pro wrestling world, it does have like its ups and downs, but for the most part, right, it's everybody understands what it is. It's a bunch of grown-ass people dressing up to pretend to fight each other for a piece of leather with some plates that says champion on it, driven through story to be able to put on this performance to entertain people.
I wish everyone understood what it was, because I do think that there are some fundamental differences. I will challenge that just by saying I think that some people think what it really is about is all about you getting ahead, and other people will think that it's all about the best in the show. And I do think there are times when, of course, you have to look out for yourself and you can't put yourself in a bad situation. But I do think there are certain people I wish, at least the way that I understand it, because other people might say I'm the wrong one, and that's totally valid. But I'm like, I wish you got it, that what's more productive is not whether or not you win or lose in this moment. It's whether or not you get brought back to continue to have a platform. It's that you make an impact on the audience. It's that you create a moment to be remembered. And because that will then lead you more likely to have people buy your merchandise, thus making more money. It will make it so that more people are interested in bringing you on board. All of those facets, I think people get so caught up sometimes not remembering that it's
a play.
It's a play. It's a play.
Yeah, it is a performing art, is what it is. I
and your job, I think, is to win for losing, right? Like the truly great pro wrestler is the person who can win for losing. Because if you're not great at what you do, you have to win, right? The only way then for you to get over is to constantly be the indomitable force. And of course, everyone wants to be the main event. They want to be the champion, and some people don't. Some people love being a role player. You know, there's incredible supporting actors in the world. There's incredible character actors that I absolutely love. All of that has a place in the ecosystem. I think if you can make yourself memorable, if you can make yourself someone who brings value to the show, someone who is professional, and professional does not mean docile. It doesn't mean I agree. It doesn't mean having a voice, but it does mean that when you come to complain or when you come to have another idea, the idea is here's how I think the show will be better, not here's how I can look better. Sometimes those things go hand in hand. There's no reason that, like, in this moment, you're right. The show is better if Red Dog looks stronger. But you also have to be equally ready to be like, I really think that this person needs the moment right now because this is their time. I just, the team mentality is really important to me.
I agree. And it's one of those things where I guess even for me, like being at the open, like I'm just watching, just kind of learning, just kind of trying to understand like what's going on. And then just like interpreting everything that's happening. Right. And still in the meantime, while I'm like watching and learning and taking down notes, and I'm still networking with everybody too. So, and everybody knows that like, oh yeah, we should definitely talk about getting this dude over. Like I'll bring a perfect example, right? I was at Pro Wrestling Grind, right? I love Grind. I do. I genuinely do. I just want to go and help, right? And in fact, they have a show. By the time
I just want to sit here, if you're looking for your clickbait headline, Red Dog loves to grind. That's your
that's just clip that out.
There's your headline.
But I do, and so they have a show coming up, and it's really great. And all I do is just retweet all their stuff, and just like and retweet, and just kind of keep pushing it out, put their names out there. And I'm gonna probably go check out the show, watch it, and just cheer them on from the sidelines, and then I know. But at their last show that I was at, I was there cheering them on, doing the things I was doing, helping tear down, set up, do all those things, right? Pay your dues. And one of the people I've had on the podcast, I thought I recognized her, but I didn't want to be like, hey, aren't you blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, I just want to say anything. I'm just going to wait. Sure enough, like as I'm moving stuff, all of a sudden I hear, hey, Cliff. And I was like, hey, what's up? And it's a girl named Ashley. She runs Kaiju Pro Wrestling, and she was at the show. And she's like, why didn't you tell me you moved up here? I was like, it's funny. I thought that was you. I just didn't want to make an ass of myself and walk up and be like, what's up, At? And then not be you. And so, but because of her, right, she was like, hey, I'm going to help you out and get you networked in a little better around this area. And that's what's been happening. And, so that led to one thing. It's lead to more things that are coming down the pipe. I'm super excited. And then recently, I actually made my debut in Maine.
Great.
Supernova Wrestling. Super exciting. It was awesome. But I was supposed to only be there for and by the way, shout outs to Sean Carlson for that hookup too. I want to make sure to put that out there. But
Sean Carlson, of course, one of the signature forces behind 1CW in Delaware.
Yeah. And then so he threw it out there, and then I got to talking with the guys over at Supernova, and all those guys. They had never seen Red Dog before. They don't know who he is, right? They just see this dude in all red looking like Deadpool. And I went out and I showed up. I helped out. I set up the ring and stuff like that with the guys. And then a bunch of people had called out. And because a bunch of people had called out, they needed an extra match. So they asked if I'd be willing to step in. And I was like, of course. And so I went in and I went out and got the crowd to just be like super invested into me. And I did not win, right? This story wasn't about me. This is kind of where I was trying to get with your story too. It wasn't about me. It was about helping this other person show that they're still a force, right?
Right.
And so when I came back out for the Rumble spot, which is what I was originally brought there for, the crowd was vibrant. They were like, "Oh, he's
Awesome.
back!" And then teasing spots that like I was gonna win and stuff like that. Ultimately, I didn't win the Rumble, but it was just fun. And now because of that, it's gotten me another opportunity to work at another promotion, and it leads to those things. And it's about because ultimately, like you said, you don't. There are moments where you need to put your foot down and say, "Hey, I would like it to be my time, and I think it's my time now." But there are also times where you have to look and understand, like, hey, it's not about you; it's about the bigger picture and who else is getting showcased on these teams.
And it's also like you saying, like my time, where it's. And I know you don't mean it this way, but just to sort of extrapolate even on that language, it's like I'd like the opportunity. I have an idea. It's not just, oh, it's my time. It's here's how me being in a spot is going to benefit this promotion and this show.
Yeah.
And like, if you give me the ball, I will run with it. But also here is, like you just said, like you could see this crowd got really behind me. I can do that. We can build this person, etc. When you have those thoughts and those plans, and I do think you and I've talked about this offline about different things work out best when both parties have that same mindset, right? It doesn't matter if you are thinking long term, if the promoter is incapable of doing that. And then you have to go, okay, what is the most that I can invest in this particular situation? I can come in, I can do some shows, I can have fun as long as I'm getting value. And then when that's not the case, I'll walk away. If that is somebody who really does see the long term and building, then you can start to have those conversations. Obviously, that's what I'm most interested in. That's what I like to do. And of course, all rosters are limited. Everyone wants
Right.
their spot and their moment. And I think a lot about building a roster the way that you would think about the cast of a recurring TV show. You've got your 6 to 8, maybe 10 people that are your regulars. They're the people whose names would be on the credits of Daredevil, right? They're the people that are probably going to be in every single episode or most of those episodes. Then you've
Right.
got your recurring characters. They're your Newmans on Seinfeld. They're around enough that they are an inherent part of the show, but they are not on every episode. They're probably maybe every 3. They might come in for a spot or disappear. They're part of the mix. Maybe they're more expensive. There's reasons you've got to use them in limited fashion. You've got your short-term guest star arcs where you bring in somebody specifically for 3 to 4 shows to do a story with them. Hey, Cliff, we're going to agree with this in advance. I'm going to bring you in. We're going to do this angle. We're going to put you over this person, and then you're going to lose to this person. 4 weeks, 4 months, and then we'll see where it goes. But you know that you are a guest star spot for this. You make the most of it. Your special guest stars, that's like if I was going to bring in Paul Rudd to do an episode of my television show. I can't afford him, but boy, it would be great to pop a number. That's Matt Cardona. And then you have your day players. You have the people who come in. Maybe they will get more opportunities, but they're younger or earlier in their career looking for their spot. If they really stand out, maybe they'll get more scenes, but you're just really honest with them up front. Hey, you're here. It's a match. You're going to put this person over. It's an opportunity, but I want to be honest with you. I've got my core. And
Yeah.
I think if you're really, obviously things change and flux and move in and out, but if you have that mindset and you can be honest with people about the role that they're coming in for, then everyone can make informed decisions and feel comfortable about where they are and how much time they want to invest in a particular product as well.
Yeah, no, that's kind of like the way I was like meaning. I guess you're right. I wasn't meaning my sense of like my time, but I was like, sometimes you got to fight for like that one spot or that one shine, one situation to kind of
Yeah.
showcase who you are. That's kind of where I was looking at, and I for me like right now, like I got to work a squash match with Ray Jazz, right, and Ray Jazz at the time, right,
Was
because
undefeated.
he was undefeated,
Not
and
anymore.
no, Ichiban, I'm paying attention. But I got to help out in that streak somewhere in there. Red Dog number 47, I believe it is. That was me. And so
In indie wrestling's Italian Goldberg.
yeah, so I got to work. And the funny thing was is if you listen to that, if you watch that segment back, right? Uh the first couple matches, right? The crowd's kind of they're there, they're kind of listening, but they're kind of quiet, right? and it leads up to me coming out, right? And I'm hyped, but the crowd doesn't know how to take me, right? Because I come out of the curtain and you hear them. I'm hyped. I'm obviously going to Red Dog, and like I again, because I'm not thinking about stop, pause, wait a second, then go. I come out. I'm like, hey, what's up? Look at the camera. Boom, gone. And I jump in the crowd and I sit with this person and I get in a ring and then we start talking trash, right? And you see me hit these first two clotheslines. And if you listen to the background, you hear the crowd, red dog, right? I go pick up Ray Jazz. I put him on my shoulders. He flips. He gets me into to backslide, gets the win. But it's the crowd. The crowd's like, obviously, like I just showed up. I've been there 48 seconds and the
Right.
crowd is already behind me. And I'm like, this is something that I can do continuously and I can help put over other people. Like if you want me to help put over like your next baddie, whoever that is, give me the opportunity and I'll do that for you. I was like, I'm not looking for anything in return. I'm just looking for a chance to
Right.
showcase what I can do. And that's all I want to do. And it goes back to just being a great team and being a good team player. And then just know, like, hey, you know where your role is. Like I could be the lovable loser. I'm not worried about that part.
Well, that's the thing is for me, it's like, yes, people could be misused and devalued. That's difficult and that's tough. And that is one of the things in wrestling where I respect any performer's need to protect their brand and their value. 100%. If you're in a situation that is routinely causing you damage, then you have to protect yourself. It's a weird business that's almost unlike any others in some respect. But also, if you don't have a platform, you can't build a connection. Some people, like you have been doing, try and build that platform outside of the bounds of maybe a promoter, through a podcast, through videos. You see what Danhausen was able to do. You see what Warhorse has been able to do in the past, stuff like that. But for lots of people, having the opportunity with promotions is what's going to give you those moments. And if you find a way to rub people the wrong way and not get booked, you will never get those at-bats that then allow you to build equity and brand value. And if you're dealing with someone who's square, once they see that Red Dog is getting big responses each time, they're hopefully going to go, okay, well, then there's a use for you. Now, sometimes one of the issues is, of course, when people see themselves in a different role. You just said right now, I could be the lovable loser. I think that's really great, and I think that can evolve into something. There are some people that can never see themselves as that, right? Where they go, I see myself as everyone, like as the guy, and maybe they're not in that mind. And that's where that honest and difficult communication comes from, because setting expectations, this is beyond wrestling, right? This is again like last time where we kind of talked about stuff and then it becomes a bigger life issue. But so much about miscommunication is about not expressing expectations clearly to each other and coming in with differing expectations and then having those expectations go unmet. And that's where I think that, open, honest, direct communication, kind, tactful, obviously, but directly and proactively. Jeff Jarrett says it all the time. That man's learned a lot, and I really enjoyed listening to his podcast. One of the things he says is over communicate. I have found that to be exactly the case. When I get out of my anxiety and I get out of my fear and I proactively communicate with people, it tends to head off a lot of the potential messy situations that happen because, now I have to address something at the last minute and someone's got something in their head and we're not talking about it, or I find out 3 months later that you've thought that I owe you this. And all of that can be better handled if there is more upfront, direct, honest communication and setting of expectations.
Yeah, and that's something like, I guess when it comes, because you and I have had conversations off stream, right, where like we talked about how does Red Dog himself get over in situations that like it's unfamiliar, right? It's just to me as a person, right? Not just to Red Dog himself, but like for instance, we'll use a note that was given to me, right? Like, I don't understand who Red Dog is.
Right.
Can you explain to me? I'm like, cool. He's kind of like he's just Deadpool in the wrestling world. Like, he's very snarky. He just he's lovable. People like him a lot for some reason. They gravitate towards him. But then, like, he's a mercenary who's kind of a dick. Like, he just likes to make jokes and stuff. And I got asked, like, can you do that in an elevator pitch? Can you sell Red Dog as that person in an elevator? And so it's just something like I've thought about, like, if I'm in a ring and I don't have an entrance and it's just we're standing there, right? And the crowd has never met me, how do I get over? And so, like, I've been working on that and thinking about how to develop that first 5 seconds of whatever it is that I need to do, right? Not just tactfully, like, doing it as well as in promos, but then also doing it in, like, this is who Red Dog needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to try to play with that idea and, like, understand and learn and pull and keep twisting and pulling knobs and learning and just understanding, like, how I can get this broken down to, like, hey, here's a 50,000 foot view in 3 seconds that you're going to be able to understand, like, who this character is and why he's here.
I mean, my initial elevator pitch to you would potentially be, and I don't know how much this resonates to you, but, and this is basing it maybe even more off of your parts of your real life background, because I'm not going to say that you have PTSD, but, I think a version of Red Dog that lets go of the Daredevil, or sorry, the Deadpool explicit comparison, though it makes sense to me, because letting go of the mercenary side of it for a moment, my brain, I think you could say Red Dog is a highly dangerous, highly trained, highly traumatized former military personnel who becomes Bugs Bunny in the wrestling ring to deal with his pain. And that, to me, sums up the different levels. I am intelligent. I am smart. I am dangerous. I am damaged. And so I'm fun and I'm goofy and I'm Bugs Bunny. And then if you get me, if you trigger me, if you end up going down that path with me, then I can become very scary and very dangerous, because, as Liam Neeson likes to say, I am a highly trained man with very specialized skills, and you took my daughter and all that sort of stuff. And I think that there's something there, maybe for you, if that's helpful or not, for the Red Dog, is like, Red Dog is a dog that was beaten and left on a leash and wants to be loved because he never had that love, but never forgot the years that he was kicked.
Yeah.
And then it's about, can you do that in the ring, right? Like,
right.
That's highfalutin character stuff, but I can see how that plays, because you can tell a story about someone who's so caught up in the adulation of the crowd or the love or being funny and being goofy and this or that. But then when somebody says or does the wrong thing, he's fucking scary. I hope we can curse on your show.
Yeah, no, we can always curse on this show because, YouTube doesn't give us any ad revenue anyway. Fuck them.
I don't know how much that speaks to you. I don't know if that's all the stuff, but we've talked a lot, and I feel like that is an area of exploring the contrast of your character, the idea of someone who is goofy and fun-loving, but because they are masking the pain and the trauma and the danger, and that's because that's Deadpool, right? I have cancer. I make tons of jokes because I'd love to be dead. If I could die, I would choose to die, but I can't die, so I choose to laugh, because to live in horror constantly is terrible. But make no mistake, I would die in a heartbeat if I could. Yeah. I'm not saying Red Dog has that same streak, but something along those lines of, I am dealing with whatever it is in me from my experience by having fun and being jovial and getting that affection and getting that roar of the crowd. But make no mistake, I was a fucking intel specialist in the Air Force. I've done things, I've seen things, I've hurt people. You could be one of them. So enjoy the shtick. You'll be safer if you just enjoy the shtick.
It's better if you just laugh. But the moment that you say something, like pet related, I'm going to break your fucking back.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. I love the aspect of, and I tell people, I was like, the more I start building the world and like understanding, like, he's got a family, right? Like I've put that in promos, like he has a family, and that plies and Crayolas don't pay for themselves. And it's like I've been able to build layers of this character, and it's funny because like I've had people like go, "Dang, dude, you have a super in-depth character. Like he
Mm-hmm.
knows where he's at, he knows what he needs to do, he knows what's going on, he knows his trigger points." Like it's kind of cool to talk to people who are like, you're like a 7-layer nacho dip right now. Like you have a lot of like stuff to you.
But then, and that's the sort of thing where I think about when you think about your character, there's the version of, okay, who am I in the environment like Wrestling Open, where hopefully when and if my name gets called and if I can take over and take off, I will have multiple weeks to really dive in and do a story and sort of become like a Channing Thomas or a Ted Goods or Millie and Kathleen, like these characters that have gone on a journey and people invest in. And so when they change, it matters. But you also need to be the red dog that works in front of an audience that has literally never seen you before, will never see you again. The first time that you show up in like Lewistown, Pennsylvania for HWF, for example, or any place else, if you're traveling, it's got to be the same character, but there's a level of depth that like you can't do, right? You can't introduce all of those elements in one, and they're not all going to serve you, even though there's certain aspects of it. So it's what's the match that is this is the Red Dog 101 that you can get everything you need from me. And then there's the in-depth, here are the elements of Red Dog that I think will work to explore when I have the time to be featured consistently by the same promotion. And both of those things I think are really important for people. I think that sometimes people think that the audience is already familiar with them. You need to earn it every single time.
Yeah. No, 100%. Listen, so we're gonna take this part of the show. We're gonna go into another direction, which I definitely love because we still gonna have more talk. We're gonna talk more stuff about this, and I'm gonna kick some ideas to you and see how you think about them. But more importantly, we're gonna take my second favorite segment of the 3 Count podcast, which is gonna be called Pin, Submit, and DQ. And this is how it works. I'm gonna fire off 3 people at you. You can have to pin one, submit one, or DQ one. And yeah, that's how this is gonna work. Doesn't matter. You can talk about how you want to pin them, how you want to submit them, how you want to DQ them. Doesn't matter, but it's just how it's going to be.
Okay.
So first 3 that we're going to throw up, and I definitely love all these people, right? But we're going to throw up 3 people who are very close to me. The Don, Chaz Evans, Prince Machiavelli, and the Shooter, Noah Idol.
Great. I'm thinking of this as a booker. That's how I'm going to do it. So I'm imagining a world where these are in matches. They're not against me, but what makes the most sense for the character? I'm going to go ahead and say that we are going to pin Chaz, that he fought valiantly. He fought to the end. And at the last moment, he just couldn't get it done. 1, 2, 3, valiant babyface fire. We're going to go ahead. And Noah, we're going to say, is going to submit. He's a little younger. He's a little bit more inexperienced. He got caught. He got trapped. And him having to submit is going to fire up the other 2 members of Pure Ignorance to get revenge for their bud. And Machiavelli, he's been around the longest. He's got the tricks. He smacked someone right in the head because of what they did to Shuda. And so he gets disqualified. But really, he's the moral victor in the situation. How'd I do?
I like it a lot. I'll do. All right. So the next 3 people that we're gonna take, right? This is gonna be kind of fun, and I kind of want to see where this goes, right? So we're gonna take J.K. Tolkien, right? We're gonna take Stephen King, and then we're gonna take last but not.
Do you mean J.R. Tolkien or J.K.
J.R.
Rowling?
Tolkien. Yeah,
okay.
J.R. Tolkien.
Great.
And then Jake, and then yeah, we're gonna take Miss Harry Potter herself too. So there's all those 3 fascinating different authors. Now you got to pin one, submit one, and DQ one.
Okay, I'm gonna pin J.R. Tolkien because I want the match to end. I can only last through so much of it. I'm gonna disqualify Stephen King because unfortunately I've never read one of his books, so I can't speak to it, and so he's disqualified. And we're gonna submit J.K. Rowling because what the fuck are you doing? Like, Why are you the way you are, and why are you turning an entire passionate fan base against you in the name of hate? And so we'll pin JR. We'll pin Tolkien. I appreciate it. I don't need to listen to the Silmarillion. We will disqualify Stephen King. I watched most of it, the original one with all the sitcom families, once. And fucking Dreamcatcher was like the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. Holy shit. I hate that film. And then J.K. Rowling is tapping.
Yeah, I got
as
you.
well. She probably should tap out.
So the last two we're going to take are some people that are very familiar as well. We're going to take M. Night Shyamalan, right? We're going to take oh Jesus, I had his name and I just lost it. Michael, Transformers director.
Michael Bay?
Michael Bay, thank you. And then last but not least, a person that we always love to cheer on, Adam McKay.
All right.
See, everybody thinks that this is gonna go like that wrestling direction, and I just
I just feel like I'm sort of repeating the logic. I'm gonna disqualify M. Night Shyamalan because what's happening, man? Like
the happening. That's what.
Right? No, because it's a Russo swerve, right? Like we thought it was this, and then it was that, and it's M. Night Shyamalan, and then he and Russo teamed up, and it didn't make sense, and then Vince is the higher power, but it's actually an alien. The whole thing is a DQ, so it's been dismissed. Who lifted the briefcase? I don't know. Tune into the next M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm gonna submit Michael Bay because it's just the seizures. It's too much explosions. And then I'm gonna pin Adam McKay because then you talk to each other. Spoilers, like during the pin a little bit, and I could whisper in his ear, be like, "I really like your stuff. Winning Time's really fucking good."
I love This Is 40.
Right. Well, I just legitimate like Winning Time is a great show, and I'm really enjoying. I really want it to get a third season. So everybody. Pin Adam McKay by watching Winning Time season 2. I should plug my own stuff, not the show on Max. But anyways,
don't worry, you'll get there. Well, there you go. That's pin, submit, DQ. So the last thing I need though, and Jason already kind of beat me to the punch. Let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
Sure. So, I think primarily right now, these are the places to find me. I am the commentator and creative producer for Fight Pro Wrestling. Season 1 of Fight Pro. The entire thing is one of the things I'm most proud that I have done and been involved in wrestling. I was able there to help call all those shows and shepherd it creatively along from episode 1 through 12. They're all available right now on IWTV. And depending on when this airs, if it comes out before then, we're going to start taping season 2 at the Skid Row Wrestling Academy in New Jersey on Sunday, September 24th. Already announced are Rhett Titus versus Logan Easton LaRoe for the hybrid title, Gia Scott versus Impact Wrestling Savannah Evans for the grappling division, and the Shinobi Shadow Squad of Cheeseburger and Eli Isom going up against Dog Nation for the tag titles. Also announced as of today are Rebecca J. Scott, Rabbit Honey Badger Ryan Mooney, Ruthless Lala, the American Hammer Matt Quay. That's a blue chip talent. You should totally be on the lookout for him. So that's all. Check that out. I love calling the action for Virginia Championship Wrestling, VCW. You can check out their Facebook page, Logan Easton LaRoe versus Christopher Daniels. That was a match I had the opportunity to call, as well as my friend the Boar defeating Logan for the heavyweight championship. That match was a really incredible night to be there. I am the commentator for both Voltage Wrestling and 1CW. They both have television shows that now air, so you can watch 1CW on the Delmarva Sports Network. You can watch Voltage on Antietam cable WCTV, I believe it is, but I hopefully that'll end up going online as well. I also do commentary for Victory Championship Wrestling out of McMecken, West Virginia, and I'm going to be starting up with a couple other companies soon, hopefully. I am super interested in doing more creative work with companies. I'm super interested in doing more commentary, so if you're interested in that, please do reach out to me. And if you thought that the conversation that Cliff and I had about his character and direction and the basic idea, I do consulting. I do consulting for wrestlers on character development, and I also do consulting with promoters on booking and general storytelling structure. And that could be coming and watching a match or a show and giving notes, or just getting on a Zoom and doing an hour's worth of deep dive to kind of talk about how to incorporate character into wrestling, from everything from how it affects your move set to strengths and weaknesses and lots of different areas. Cliff has been a client of mine, so I hope that he will give a positive recommendation here. Rates are really reasonable, and I'd love to reach out to you. And my podcast is currently on a hiatus, but hopefully we'll be back soon. It's called Collected Possibilities. Go ahead and listen to the back episodes. And if you do want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Collected Possibilities. That's the best way to do it. Or on Facebook at Collected Possibilities. I will answer all of that.
Well, there you go. He gave you all his information. He told you where you can find him. He even told you where you can listen to him, because, you know, he's got a great voice. So, like every good part of a wrestling match, you gotta take this home, because this is the 3 Count Podcast Presents, now entering 201, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. But like every good shepherd, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it way better than you can. That's why I said about me, it's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You see him right there, the man, the myth, the legend, the voice, Jason Heat. You guys know what to do. Tune in to the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately following us on all of our social media platforms. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify. You're even listening to us on Amazon Music, because we are there too. You're leaving us 5-star Frost Fast reviews that you can leave on Apple Podcasts. You're buying our merch from ProWrestlingTees.com or ForYourWear.com. You're even telling your friends, your neighbors, your dogs, the enemies, your close and far off distance as my camera goes off, and you're checking out everybody with that. You're doing all that stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for, you know, that outro, and then you're choosing another.
Suck it, Tolkien. The Hobbit was too long. It's not your fault, but The Hobbit, they were too long. No one needs 3 Hobbit movies.